So, good morning. We are today still exploring the wonderful compendium on mind training that traverses short and long teachings from the Mahayana tradition, particularly Lojong, things related to Lojong, Tonglen, the meditation practice associated with Lojong. And today, the topic is a new commentary. Just pulling up the title. Eliminating future adversities. So how do we work with mind training so clearly so that it becomes such a ingrained habit that we actually are eliminating future difficulties? So this commentary begins with, all right, there are 4 times you're likely going to forget your mind training, and there are 4 times where we're likely to lose our mind training. So the key one is during the agonizing moment of death. Very difficult to retain mind training in that moment. Also, when we transition into the next life through the bardo, when we're in our mother's womb, and unless it's a significant habit of learning, we won't have that habit in the next life. The times when it's likely to be lost, are so predictable, we can certainly understand that. When we have severe suffering, particularly suffering caused by humans. So at the moment when somebody is punching you in the nose, at the moment someone is screaming at you, when you have, extraordinary trauma or recall trauma. Then, when we have extreme suffering caused by non-humans, being eaten by a bear, hard to retain your mind training. When you're suffering a grave illness caused by the elements, and when strong afflictions arise. So, yes, it's very natural. I mean, in the scheme of things, in the scheme of all the seconds of this moments of being alive, even in this lifetime, the amount of time we've devoted to mind training is probably very tiny compared to all the moments that we've lived. So if we think of, we have a habit of breathing, and I think they call it an involuntary habit. We want to make our mind training like an involuntary habit, that it's so strong it is not something we have to call to mind or recall. It is a habit that is an automatic response. So the first step is gratitude, making offerings to the teacher, making offerings to the 3 jewels, making prayers of aspiration. When we open our Sunday Dharma class, we make many prayers of aspiration that we're able to benefit beings, that all beings have happiness, etc. So let's understand those prayers. Really, the root of being able to benefit beings is to accomplish our mind training. This is a Vajrayana commentary, so it also says offering a torma to the protectors. So this is a wonderful understanding of the commitments that great beings have made to when they leave their human life and they're manifesting as bodhisattvas or manifesting as a Sambhogakaya being, not not a Nirmanakaya being that we experience directly in this life, that they take on the responsibility of protecting the Dharma. So, for instance, in the Drikung, one of the major protectors is Achi, and we offer tea to Achi, offer milk to Achi, offer the torma is like a little cake. It's a traditional little cake. So we think of all those beings who created the foundation for our practice today, and express gratitude to these invisible beings that are connected to protecting the Dharma and protecting our practice. So having accomplished that, this commentary says, okay, then you make 4 clear decisions. And these decisions are just going to the root. The decisions are, all paths are to be traversed by one. All aspirations are concentrated into one. All conceptions or all thoughts are leveled out, and remedies are instantly applied to vanquish the remaining forces. All paths are to be traversed by one is a pointing out that if we look at all of the Dharma that we're learning, if we look at all of our difficulties when we're putting the Dharma into practice, they are all cut through with one understanding that the root is self-grasping. So self-grasping, is still a translation in progress of the concept that for the most part, our daily experience is a silo of how is this for me? Even when we're doing lovely, virtuous things, even when we're offering that little ritual cake, there is a sense of, I am doing this. I am doing this so that the protector protects me. If we think of all the discussions we have about our Tonglen practice, in the sense of breathing in subtle suffering that beings are experiencing, breathing in the experience of a loved one of suffering, and exhaling our comfort and our health, whatever we see as our exhalation. We see that what is the root of our fear. So Tonglen is an extraordinary compassion training, loving kindness training, but it is also beyond that, or intermixed with that, a teaching on how self-grasping, or this silo, this bubble of self-concern, is continuously interrupting the process of our heart opening up, the process of growing towards fearlessness, the process of the great expansion of bodhicitta that dissolves the separation between self and others. So when we start to understand that at the root of all the difficulty of living the Dharma is self-grasping, the root of even understanding the deeper philosophical instructions when we try to put those instructions into practice, our self-grasping arises, or our bubble of self-absorption. And in essence, when we're working with all of the attachments and afflictions that we wish to overcome, what trips us up continuously is this silo of self-absorption the strength of it overcomes mindfulness and prevents mindfulness from cutting through the pattern either of thinking or acting. So the instruction of this lovely commentary says, if we really understood it, if we annihilated self-grasping today, we'd attain Buddhahood today. If we annihilated it tomorrow, we'd attain Buddhahood tomorrow. If it remains undestroyed, there's no Buddhahood. That at the instant we understand and dissolve self-grasping, that is the instant we become fully enlightened. And how is this connected with compassion? It's when there is no longer this silo, this bubble of self-absorption, this fear barrier of self-grasping that I have to think of myself first. When that's fully dissolved, there's nothing that prevents compassion. There's nothing that impedes compassion. The flavor of the absence of self-grasping is compassion. So we're starting to understand and see that at the root of all these patterns, anger, addiction, fear, is this one root. So this one root needs to be addressed. And the second decision is all aspirations then are concentrated into one. And the instruction is really very simple. All right, if our clarity is telling us that it's all about self-absorption principle, self-grasping principle, then let's integrate that with our mindfulness, the mindfulness of body. In the simplest instructions, let's integrate that with self-grasping so that everything we do can have a purpose of undermining self-grasping. So sitting down, is this a comfortable chair? Wow, immediately self-grasping. It's about my comfort. Is my back supported? Do I have any pain in my back? Can I make myself more comfortable? Then sitting even in a meditation posture becomes about self-grasping rather than can I maintain a posture that supports clarity of mind, and can I identify the minute self-grasping arises as a distraction in, just even subtle discomfort? Can we use it when we're walking? It even mentions the word strolling. So even in our relaxed walking. It's a sunny day in Maine after a week of rain, so many people will be going out and taking a walk in nature today. So can I see how quickly self-grasping arises? Is the temperature perfect? Do I need a little more, a little less? In Maine, we're always putting on a fleece, taking off a fleece. So my comfort, my self-grasping towards comfort arises. So how do we understand that? It's not that we're meant to be cold or hot, but it's more, I see it's about addressing comfort. This body needs another jacket, not, I'm a little cold, it's a little drafty in here. Identify the moment it becomes about self-grasping. Identify, may I put on a jacket so that all beings who are cold also have jackets. Make it bigger. transform self-grasping as it arises into an offering practice, into a Tonglen practice, even as we go to sleep. And then the concluding instruction is, few other aspirations need to be pursued. It's, may, in every situation I'm in, may I use it to diminish self-grasping, may I use it to recognize self-grasping, and may all beings also be able to recognize and diminish their self-grasping. So now the third decision. All conceptions are leveled out. So in this practice, there's a reminder that it's not about getting rid of thoughts. In fact, in the tradition of Gampopa, in the tradition of the Drikung, thoughts are kind. Thoughts are how we understand the path, how we move along the path, and eventually how we recognize wisdom. So if we're not trying to get rid of thoughts, we take them onto the path, and in this particular decision, we're looking at two things. First, we're looking at an affliction the moment it arises. So I'm really working with diet these days and working with cutting out sugar, and I was at a memorial potluck, and they had 5 pies, brownies, cookies, just, you know, it was a smorgasbord of desserts. So if I was able to identify the very first moment, the little flicker of, oh, I want pie, arose in my mind, the instruction is that first flicker, it's not huge. If we recognize the affliction the moment it arises, it hasn't had an opportunity to grow. That's the easiest time to say, oh, look at that self-grasping. You know, what is the relationship of any addiction is I want comfort, I want to feel good in this moment, without any investigation that actually that's not how you feel good in this moment or any other moment. So if we recognize the affliction the moment it arises, it hasn't taken hold of our mind, and then our mindfulness can intervene, and we have the opportunity to see the level of self-grasping that's controlling us. Then the master says, what a pity. If you shy away at that moment and don't eliminate them when they're little, then it's much harder. So when it's much harder, and all of the conceptions and different kinds of thoughts can go into this category. So then it's the time to work with it in 2 ways. So let's say it's at medium strength, and it's just at the same strength of all of your other thoughts. You're at a party, you're seeing people, you're seeing different objects, this was a memorial, so there were memories of the person who died, and many, many different kinds of thoughts. So how do we practice? We observe the thoughts. From where does it arise? Where does it reside? Where does it go when it ceases? So we're looking at, let's say, the grief that would be arising in that situation, the kinds of relationships in a crowded room filled with people, the people you really like, the people you don't know, the people who irritate you, so different kinds of relationships. Where does that thought arise of really liking this person, seeing this person as a stranger and having a different response? Where do those judgments arise from? Where do they reside, and where do they go when they cease? We can, in any situation, be drawn away from the wildness of the diversity of experiences to observe our mind. And observing our mind in a crowded room, we would have thoughts of comfort, many, many different kinds of thoughts. Where do they arise from? Where do they abide? And where do they go when it ceases? So that's medium strength. And then there are two examples that are really quite sweet. So, just like meeting an old friend. Here we are again, having different strengths of emotions, having different strengths of conceptual thoughts. We take them like an old friend, not judging ourselves for being imperfect. We take an old friend and go for a walk with them with the sense of, old friend, what are you teaching me about self-grasping right in this moment? The second example is one we hear very often, like snowflakes meeting a hot rock and dissolving. Seeing all these different kinds of thoughts. You might experience at a family dinner, all these kinds of thoughts. Instead of reacting, responding, going into ourselves in terms of how is this experience for me, having our mind training, our commitment to our mind training kick in, and just notice all these thoughts like snowflakes falling on a hot rock, dissolving. And whether it's the questioning of where they're arising from and where they're going, or watching them dissolve like snowflakes on a hot rock, we begin to see that these thoughts that strengthen this siloed perspective of how is this experience for me have no intrinsic nature. They're smoke passing through space. And so we can start to, in any situation, see, I'm starting to feel uncomfortable, so I'm going right into self-absorption. I'm starting to feel exhilarated, so I'm going into self-absorption. How is this experience for me? I'm going into fear. How is this self-absorption? We're understanding that our, essentially our only job is to really understand how we continuously create this prison of self-absorption. And then the third example is another common one. So you can just enjoy how often these agrarian, sometimes childhood experiences are referenced. So this is another very common Tibetan adage that then we're going to apply the antidotes, that remain, and it's like hitting the nose of a pig with a stick. So in many agrarian and farm communities, children were taught how to keep the pigs out of the out of the garden. Even if the garden is fenced, the pigs try and get in, and if you hit a pig lightly on the nose, it's painful, and so they run out. So we're seeing, okay, I didn't resolve the force of, in my case, I didn't resolve the force of seeing this smorgasbord of desserts when I'm addicted to sugar. Subtly, when it first arose, I didn't cut it off with mind training, questioning the nature of the thought of, I really want that pie. And now it's time to apply a more forceful perspective. Any antidote that will work, like hitting the nose of the pig with a stick. So in each and every case, we're seeing the root. Could be anger, it could be addiction, it could be attraction. When we think of the great harm that's been caused in relationships, of people getting crushes outside of their commitments. There's that flicker of attraction and how it builds with thoughts, and then the remedy is cutting it off. And I'm thinking of our training in the monastery. I trained at a monastery that was had a monk side and a nun side, and many people taking temporary ordination. Of course, people get crushes on each other. So rather than shaming, oh, you shouldn't get a crush, for this 6 weeks period you're a monk, you're not supposed to think about women, or you're not supposed to think about men. It's okay. Let's look at this. Let's take this tendency to get a crush on a walk like an old friend, not be ashamed of it. And if you have to, then really become forceful. Go out one of the instructions was to go out in the woods and, just yell the name of the person you think you have a crush on until you realize it's all an illusion that you've created in your head. And so all of this is working with levels of effective investigations that prevent a habit taking hold, and at the very root weaken the self-grasping that undermines all of our good intentions and all the way we are using the mind training to build more loving relationships and caring relationships, build with bodhicitta as we encounter all the different kinds of people in our lives. So let's reflect on this for a few minutes, really going into whatever is up for you. If you're working with anger, if you're working with irritation, if you're working with any kind of addiction whatsoever, addiction to entertainment, if you're working with, not overwhelming, but manageable depression, sadness, grief, it really doesn't matter. These are all our own mental experiences. So how would you work with these 4 decisions? Understanding that the path with all of these situations we're talking about lead to examining the one root, that we can work with every moment of our daily life, addressing the root, working with making aspirations, working with the antidotes to the afflictions in leveling out our conceptions and working with even more specific antidotes for the particular kind of affliction that we're working with. I think we'll sit with this for a minute or two and then have breakout rooms. And we'll close the live portion. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.